Hi everyone, welcome to day 10 of Pop-Up COP. And today we have Alessandro Vitelli joining from IETA and Bridget Hartland-Johnson, who's been at Ørsted and Siemens in the past, and she's now a non-exec director. She'll introduce herself in a little bit when we move on to some of her thoughts. Interestingly, Bridget has not ever been to a COP, so I think that's quite useful because although she's imbued in clean energy and corporate experience in the areas that COP relates to, she actually hasn't been to a COP. So it'll be interesting to hear her reflections on what's being talked about today. Thank you both for joining. Alessandro, please give us the update. What's happening at COP?
Okay. The Brazilian presidency of COP, they're the hosts this year, so they get to be the presidents of COP. They have come out with proposed, I guess you'd call them a cover text, but they're not a cover text, which is the overarching political declaration, in which they're dealing with the four issues that we've talked about several times before, namely the synthesis of all the nationally determined contributions, the national climate pledges, and calculating how far away they are from getting us to 1.5 degree maximum warming. They're also dealing with the issue of finance flows from developed to developing countries. They're dealing with transparency reports, which are ways in which countries demonstrate how they're achieving their nationally determined contribution, their progress towards their own self-binding target. These issues and a couple of others are being encompassed in a political text which they're referring to, and it's a Brazilian word, so I hope I get the pronunciation right, the Mutirão text. Mutirão apparently is a sort of way of collaborating and cooperating to reach and achieve, a target or a goal. And these negotiations are being chaired by the presidency itself. They've not been farmed out to anybody else. The presidency is running those particular talks. The text that came out yesterday basically encompasses the discussions on those topics, where countries are at the moment, where they differ. There are brackets in the text, which means that there are some elements of the text which are contested and therefore not agreed. And they're hoping, they still express the hope that they could have a plenary meeting of all countries today to approve that text. Now, I haven't seen a schedule that shows a plenary meeting today, so we wait and we see. But that's
what they're. The plenary meeting, Alessandro?
It's when all countries are in the room, and there's an official session of COP or CMP or CMA or whichever level we are at. These are the various elements of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change's different treaties and groups, and they all get together. There's chair on the podium, and they gabble through their texts as they approve them. And I haven't seen a schedule for that yet, so we don't know. But Brazil is very keen to finish this on Friday, which would be unheard of. 20 years.
Where do you see these schedules? So, Bridget, we were talking before we went live, and Bridget was asking a bit more about the, the practical thing. What do we do when we go to COP? Where do we see these things? It used to be on pieces of paper, didn't it? But it's not anymore.
They're on the UN website. There's a schedule of all the different events under each of the different bodies every day. There's the schedule of press conferences, meetings, consultations. Various country groups, negotiating groups have their coordination meetings. It's all listed on the website. Excuse me. Or it's on these scrolling TV screens around the COP venue. So you stop and you stare and you wait for the meeting to scroll. It's kind of like being in an airport, when you're waiting for your flight to turn up. Same thing.
Speaking of which, Alessandro, where are you today, please?
Today I'm at the Belém Beach Club Plaza, which is a very nice little cafe at the side of the river here, near where I'm staying, because it's the quietest place. You cannot hear yourself think inside the COP venue.
Yeah. And can you talk about the boats as well? That might be interesting for listeners.
Well, you mean where I'm staying? I'm staying on a riverboat. It looks a little bit like one of those paddle wheel steamers you see on rivers of the Mississippi, for example.
Yeah.
It's got a few cabins. It's got a nice little upper deck area where I sometimes work. It's got great Wi-Fi, and tiny cabins, which are all we need. You just need a bed and a shower,
But
because
why? And so we've seen you there. You've joined us sometimes from there, and we've had the COP
yeah.
in the distance, the venue.
Mm.
But why are you staying on a boat, Alessandro?
Because when COP comes to a town, a city, it's an opportunity for people to make money. And some of the hotel nightly rates will make your eyes water.
But I guess they can't accommodate everybody really for a non-permanent.
No, I mean, Belém is a
yeah.
city of 1.5 million people, and I don't think they've got 60,000 hotel rooms. So there's a lot of Airbnb going on. There's a lot of Ubers being used. And you know they got inventive with their riverboats, and there are a bunch of them parked up alongside the river, all the way up and down. It's perfectly pleasant. It's unusual. Put it that way.
Well, lots of unusual things happen.
What about the mosquitoes?
Not as bad as I feared.
Okay.
Yeah. So back to the negotiations and
Yeah.
you know and things that are going on. We were talking also about forestry type issues and funds and other things that you know you've heard talks about, and how at this stage really a lot of this you were saying is really it's not, if I say gossip that sounds bad, but it's we don't know yet, do we, what's going to happen at this stage in the process.
I mean, as I said earlier, COP is 2 weeks long, and for 1 week and 4.5 days, it's all about process and discussion and politics and diplomacy and tactics. And it's only in the last possible moment that you see the text in its final version with all the brackets taken out and the agreed formulation, and you go, okay, thank you. Now I can work with this. Until then, you're basically gossiping about who's saying what, which delegation is pushing back against the fossil fuel phase out, or which delegation is unhappy about the finance provisions, that kind of thing. So it's all gossip and speculation until the last minute when you get what you get.
And so 2 things out of that, just to flesh that out a little bit. Perhaps a little bit about what the brackets are, and also there are groupings, aren't there? And that's all happening. So you know, when we were in Europe, I mean, we had a wonderful guy who actually got ill, and he's passed, Pete Betts, and he was a wonderful negotiator for the UK, and he also led a lot of the great work that Europe did back, didn't he? Was amazing.
Back in the day. In fact, I've just started reading his book, which he wrote before he passed.
Yeah, he was an amazing chap, but he also, you know, so we had this European, and there still obviously is a European group that meets and discusses their position. There's an African group, there's a small island state group. There's many groups where people meet beforehand to get a position in parallel to the main negotiations.
Well, they are part of the main negotiations. I mean, these country groups basically are a way to organize lots of countries into 1 or 2 speakers, which is an efficiency. It's also a way in which they express themselves having common purpose. Yeah. So, for example, the African group has 50-something countries because it's Africa. But some of those countries are referred to as the least developed countries. And that's a group that goes far beyond just Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin America occasionally. These countries have slightly different points of view sometimes. Then you have the small island developing states, as you said, or the Association of Small Island States, which is slightly bigger because it includes the richer islands. It's really quite difficult to keep track of their overlapping interests.
And what about the square brackets? You said brackets, but I know those square brackets. Just explain a little bit about them. They are notorious.
In a negotiation over a piece of text, if countries are unhappy, if some countries are unhappy about a formulation of text, they say, can you please put that in brackets? Meaning we don't agree and we want to keep talking about it, but we want to register that we don't agree, and it's put in brackets. Sometimes, as happened earlier in the week, an entire agenda item can be put in brackets. Literally at the very top of the page, left-hand side, there's a square bracket, and at the bottom of the last page on the right-hand side, another square bracket. So the whole thing is up for grabs. And the process over the 2 weeks is removing bit by bit those brackets. Sometimes some get added at the last minute. There's a bit of a kerfuffle as they try and remove it, and then it's all good again. But those brackets are what people are focusing on in order to achieve consensus.
Bridget, I want to move over to you before we close. But I also, just for people who are listening, I've checked this out with people who are not carbon geeks, and they did find it very funny. There is a post, we'll have to see if we can mention it on one of the calls, Alessandro, about the that was very, very funny, to do with the square bracket situation and how many square bracket, the story about the chairs. We'll see if we can find that post and make reference.
I think Mike Szabo is the one who posted that.
There you go. And how do we spell Szabo?
SZABO.
Thank you. Check out his posts, and it will have a lot of likes, because it was very funny, from about a week ago or 6 days ago. Bridget,
was it like the carbon content of the amount of resolving the square bracket issues?
Well, somebody dropped all the paper, and it was very funny, but it was what led to that, and the situation just got more and more hysterical. So, Bridget, tell us a bit about yourself and how, when you listen to these things, what matters from your perspective.
Yeah, so I worked in the power sector nearly all of my life. And for the last 7 years, I've worked for a company that built offshore wind farms. And, these are huge capital intensive projects. But, and I think there's no doubt, we spoke about it earlier, Alessandro, that actually, renewables is the way forward. And we've reached that tipping point on affordability, performance, supply chain. And, the world is committed to building, I think, 3 times more renewable energy by 2030 compared to what we have now. But now everybody's facing all these grid issues, and how we pay for the upgrades of the grids and things. But one of the things that really,
why do we need to do that, Bridget? Why do we need to upgrade the grid?
Because the grid was designed for when we use fossil fuels, having big generators in one area and transporting electricity to where all the people lived and worked. And now, we're having solar connected all over the place, electric vehicles. We've got winds, a lot of electricity connecting to coastal areas. And obviously renewable electricity is generated when the wind blows or the sun shines, and we don't necessarily want to use electricity at the time. So there has to be a lot of effort made towards keeping the physics of the grid stable, in between how we use and how we produce electricity. And that keeping everything stable is costing more and more and more. Plus, every time we build some new generation technology or we build some new infrastructure, that money goes directly onto consumer bills. And, with the war in Ukraine and, the increasing price of gas and things like that, it's just again created this tipping point on affordability for consumers. But the one thing that, I've always, keep an eye on with COP is some of these big, policy statements that come out. So, when we said that we're going to phase out coal, which I think was one of the recent ones. And, I think this one, I'm hearing rumours that we're looking at a roadmap to phase out the use of fossil fuel. And we've done this really well in the UK. We've now got a target to have 95% non-fossil fuel-based electricity generation by 2030. But there's still always this, this underlying or this other agenda somewhere else that's always saying, no, we should drill more, we should keep producing more homegrown gas and all this kind of stuff. So when you get these big statements, I think it creates some kind of stability towards industry, where they think, actually, this is happening over there, so now it's going to happen to us. So we may as well invest in the future and not keep, resisting it, because it's going to happen. And I think almost it triggers this, having stability, policy stability and clear direction really does encourage investment in infrastructures. And I think that's what we need. So something like that coming out of COP, I think, would send a really, clear message that we're doing this.
And at the opening session, I was hearing that, we need to inject some hope. It's not all doom and gloom. We have done, as you say, in the UK, amazing stuff. And we were back about 10 years ago, we were on track. We did nothing to be over 5 degrees warming. We're now on track to be over 2 degrees, which is not, it's still too much. But we have moved, we've improved, and we can still continue to improve. And, one of the things we've been talking about, just when you mentioned prices, is that, we do have to perhaps consider, I would suggest, the full cost of how we live. Because if I need to have a home that's warm and comfortable, and but I can't get insurance and my house is getting flooded all the time, then there's big costs there. So maybe if my bill goes up, on one hand, the other costs could go up massively on the other if I don't have that. So, you know, there's perhaps a bigger picture to be painted.
Yeah.
Some of the
I think it's because it's all happening at the same time, because we perhaps didn't do the planning when we should have done the planning, or we took too long to create policy stability.
It's hard, isn't it, when people are in power for 4 or 5 years? I think part of the democratic, it's also part of the democratic situation that, you know, we have these issues. It is past. We're just closing up, but I wondered if anybody would be interested in. We are at the Community Co-working Centre. It's New Bridge Street. You can come down and look if you're in London. This is an amazing model that's been done by young people. Well, I met the guy who did the map, actually, which is, you can't see it, but it's a whole map of the city of London, all the streets, a bit like the old A to Z. And then they've done churches that are the Wren design churches in the city with geothermal underneath. And this has all been mapped out, and all on the walls is all the information on the different churches. This is a green skills hub. So it's really about bringing on young people and getting them to be thinking in a real constructive, practical way, very constructive way about how we can, you know, do things differently. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alessandra. We'll see you again soon. I hope the last few days of COP go well. We look forward to the outcome. You carry our hopes. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.